It was a crisp autumn evening when I decided to take a solo camping trip deep into the woods near the old Pinecrest Trail. I had heard stories about the area about how people claimed to hear strange noises, whispers at night, but I never believed them. I thought, it's just the wind. I packed my gear, grabbed my tent, sleeping bag, and a few supplies, and set off with nothing but the solitude of the forest and my own courage. The first day was uneventful. I hiked along the narrow trail, the trees towering above me like ancient sentinels, their leaves whispering in the breeze. By late afternoon, I found a clearing near a small stream. It seemed perfect for setting up camp. I pitched my tent, started a small fire, and cooked some noodles. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, and I felt an odd calm. That is, until the first whisper. It started softly, almost imperceptible at first. I thought maybe it was the wind rustling the pines. But then I realized no, it wasn't the wind. It sounded like a soft voice calling my name, Alex. I froze, my pulse quickened. Hello, I called, trying to sound brave, though my voice shook. Nothing, just the usual creaking of the trees. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. I finished my meal and crawled into my tent, zipping it shut behind me. The forest outside darkened completely, leaving only the flicker of my small lantern. Around midnight, the whispering returned. This time, it was more distinct. Alex, come out. It sounded like it was coming from all around the tent, circling me, echoing through the trees. My skin crawled. I debated leaving the tent, grabbing my flashlight, and confronting whatever it was, but my instincts screamed to stay inside. Then, something even stranger happened. My tent shook not violently, but gently, as if something outside was brushing against it. My mind raced. Could it be an animal? A deer? No. Deer don't whisper your name. My flashlight was inside the tent, but I didn't dare unzip it. I stayed frozen, listening. The whispering faded eventually, replaced by silence. I didn't sleep much that night. Every crackle of leaves, every snap of a branch sent me into panic. By morning, the sun brought a false sense of relief. I told myself it was just my imagination running wild. Birds chirped. The stream gurgled. Everything seemed normal. I packed up, planning to hike back to civilization, but the forest had other plans. As I moved deeper along the trail, I began to hear the whispers again this time, not just my name but sentences. Don't leave. Stay with us. Forever. The voice seemed almost sorrowful, desperate. I broke into a run, my legs carrying me faster than I'd ever moved before. The trail seemed longer, darker, twisting in ways that I didn't remember from the day before. Then I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. In a small clearing, surrounded by pines, there were markings carved into the tree's symbols, circles and lines that looked ancient. In the center there was a circle of stones, blackened as if from fire. And inside the circle, a pair of footprints, too large and deep to be human, leading in a looping pattern as if something or someone had been pacing there. I wanted to leave. I needed to leave. But as I turned back to the trail, I realized something terrifying. The trail was gone. Not just vanished from sight, but erased, as if the forest itself had swallowed it. Panic rose in me like a wave. I was completely lost. The whispering started again, closer this time. I could feel it brushing against my mind, tugging at my thoughts. Alex, join us. I screamed, ran blindly, my flashlight barely illuminating the way. I tripped over roots, stumbled over rocks, and finally collapsed near the stream from the day before. I thought I recognized the path, but as I looked up, the forest had changed. The stream wasn't flowing the same way. The clearing seemed different. Everything was wrong. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, surrounding me with a chorus of voices calling, laughing, pleading. My mind began to fracture under the weight of it. And then, just as suddenly as it began, silence. I woke up hours later, or maybe the next morning. I was at the edge of the forest, my tent packed neatly beside me as if nothing had happened. There was no trace of the carved trees, the stone circle, or the footprints. But my journal, which I had left inside my backpack, was open, and on the first page, written in messy, jagged handwriting that wasn't mine, "Don't come back, Alex. We're always here." I didn't go back. I don't plan to. But sometimes, at night, when the wind rustles the trees outside my window, I swear I hear them whispering my name. It was late summer when I decided to take a solo camping trip to Silver Pine Lake. Always loved camping alone. It gave me a sense of freedom, but this time, I chose a spot that was far from the main trail, where the forest grew thick and the lake's waters were dark and still. I arrived in the late afternoon, carrying only a backpack with essentials, a tent, sleeping bag, flashlight, some snacks, and my journal. The air was crisp, scented with pine and wet earth. I pitched my tent near the lake's edge, where the trees formed a natural barrier. The water shimmered in the fading sunlight, serene and calm. As night fell, I lit a small campfire. The sounds of the forest surrounded me, the croaking of frogs, the occasional splash in the water, the wind rustling the leaves. I felt calm, at peace, until I noticed something strange on the far side of the lake. A shadow. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a deer, but it didn't move like an animal. It was still too still, standing upright. And then I noticed it had no reflection in the water, even though the moonlight shone brightly. My heart started to race. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light, but the shadow seemed deliberate, like it was waiting for me. I ignored it for a while, telling myself it would disappear if I didn't look. I ate my dinner, wrote in my journal, and tried to focus on other things. But as the night deepened, I heard something else. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, moving through the underbrush behind my tent. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it toward the sound. Nothing. Only trees and darkness. But the footsteps continued, circling my campsite. Panic set in. I considered packing up and leaving immediately, but I was deep in the forest. The only way out was past whatever was out there. Hours passed. Every time I thought I'd fallen asleep, I'd wake to that shadow, still standing on the other side of the lake, closer now, or maybe I was imagining it moving closer. The whispers began around 2 soft at first, like the wind, then forming words. Come to us, join us. I stayed inside my tent, heart pounding. The whispers grew louder, almost chanting my name, my real name. My flashlight flickered. I tried to calm myself, telling myself it was stress, imagination, the isolation getting to me. At around 3 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it at the shadow. This time it was closer, just at the edge of the tree line. I could make out a figure not quite human. Its body was elongated and its limbs bent at unnatural angles. Its face had no features, just a smooth, dark surface. I froze. My mind screamed to run, but my body felt paralyzed. Then it raised a hand, or what looked like a hand, and pointed at me. In that instant, the lake behind it rippled violently, though there was no wind. The water rose in a sudden wave, crashing against the shore. I fell back, heart racing. I don't know how long I stayed frozen, but when I finally looked up, it was gone. The shadow vanished, leaving only the dark forest and the still lake. I packed my things as fast as I could, ignoring the whispers that now felt like they were coming from inside my head. I ran toward the trail the next morning, every sound amplified, every shadow a threat. When I finally reached my car, I turned back once. The lake looked peaceful, untouched, serene. No shadow, no whisper. But when I checked my journal, something was written on the last page. You saw us. We saw you. You cannot leave. I left Silver Pine Lake that day and swore I would never camp alone again. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the water lapping against my window, and a shadow moves in the corner of my vision. I had been planning this trip for months. A solo camping trip into the remote Blackwood Hollow, a forest so dense and untouched that most hikers avoided it. The stories didn't bother me. I had heard the legends, old logging cabins where people disappeared, whispers of strange lights and shadows, locals warning travelers to stay away. I thought they were just stories. I thought I was careful. I arrived mid-afternoon, my car leaving the last patch of asphalt behind me. The trail quickly narrowed, flanked by ancient pine trees that blocked the sun. The air was thick, damp, and smelled of moss and decay. I hiked for hours, enjoying the solitude, the crunch of leaves under my boots. By evening, I found a small clearing with a dilapidated cabin at its center. Its wood was weathered, gray, and rotting, with broken windows and a sagging roof. At first, I hesitated. Camping near a ruin seemed reckless. But curiosity overruled caution. I set up my tent a safe distance from the cabin, just enough to keep an eye on it. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees, painting the clearing with an eerie orange glow. I started a small fire, roasted some hot dogs, and tried to enjoy the evening. Around 9 p.m., I first noticed the sound. Soft footsteps. Not outside my tent, but from the cabin. I froze. It couldn't be. No one else was here. I grabbed my flashlight, shined it toward the broken windows. Nothing. Just darkness inside. The forest was silent otherwise. I told myself it was probably a deer or a branch falling. By 11 p.m., I couldn't sleep. The fire had died down, and the darkness of the hollow felt suffocating. I decided to explore the cabin, rationalizing that it was abandoned. As I approached, I noticed something strange. The door was slightly ajar. I hadn't seen it move before. I pushed it open. The hinges groaned. Inside, the cabin smelled of mold and rot. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor. On the wall, faint scratches formed patterns I couldn't recognize. But what caught my eye most was a journal on a rotting table. The pages were yellowed and brittle. I opened it. The first entry read, "We live here. You can stay. Don't leave." A chill ran down my spine. My flashlight flickered. I tried to laugh it off maybe. The wind caused the pages to move, but something deep in my gut screamed danger. I put the journal down and decided to leave. As I turned, I froze. In the corner, a shadow crouched. It didn't move like a human. Its head tilted unnaturally, limbs bent in ways that made my stomach twist. I shined my flashlight. It vanished. My heart raced. I ran back to my tent, tripping over roots, stumbling on rocks, not daring to look back. The whispers started then, faint at first, echoing from the cabin. Stay with us. Forever. I zipped myself into my tent, shaking. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, circling around the clearing. Every snap of a twig made me flinch. I dared not sleep. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time didn't exist there. At 3 a.m., the fire outside flared briefly. I peeked out and saw it. Dozens of shadows emerging from the trees, surrounding my tent. They moved silently, gliding rather than walking. My flashlight flickered wildly, then went out. The tent trembled, as if something large was pressing against it. I screamed, ripped open the zipper, and ran blindly into the forest. The shadows pursued me, their whispers forming a chorus of names, my name, taunting, pleading, laughing. I ran until I could no longer feel my legs. I collapsed near a stream, panting, bleeding from cuts and scrapes. When dawn broke, I looked around. The forest looked ordinary, peaceful. No shadows, no cabin, nothing. Just trees and the gentle gurgle of the stream. I stumbled back to my car, never daring to look behind me. Months later, I still dream of that cabin. Sometimes, I hear the whispers in the wind, and in my dreams, I see the shadows waiting, always waiting, in Blackwood Hollow. I know that if I ever return, they will not let me go. I had always loved remote camping spots, places where the forest swallowed you whole, far from any human presence. So, when I heard about the old Wraithwood Trail, I knew I had to see it for myself. They said a massive oak, known as the Crying Tree, grew deep in the woods. Locals warned travelers to stay away after dark. They said if you camped near it alone, the tree would call to you, whispering secrets, drawing you closer until you vanished. I didn't believe it. I thought it was a legend, a story to scare tourists. I hiked in late afternoon, carrying my usual gear, a tent, a sleeping bag, a flashlight, snacks, and my journal. The forest was dense, shadows stretching like fingers across the trail. Birds scattered as I walked. The air had a wet, earthy scent, almost like decay mixed with moss. By evening, I found it a massive oak, twisted and gnarled, its bark blackened as if burned yet alive. Its branches hung low, almost as if bowing toward me. I set up my tent a short distance from the tree. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. The forest fell silent except for the soft rustle of leaves. I tried to relax, thinking the legends were just stories. But as darkness settled, a sound began, a soft, almost human sobbing. I froze. The sound came from the direction of the tree. It was faint but unmistakable. Someone or something crying. My pulse quickened. I tried to convince myself it was the wind or maybe an animal. But the sobbing grew louder, more deliberate, a sound of despair so real it made my chest ache. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it toward the tree. The beam caught something, shadows or maybe shapes moving among the roots. I couldn't tell if it was human. The sobbing paused when I shone the light. Then a whisper, "Come closer. We need you." My stomach twisted. I stepped back, heart pounding. The crying resumed, now mixed with a chorus of whispers, soft but urgent, echoing through the clearing. My tent suddenly felt unsafe, tiny and fragile under the weight of the unseen eyes watching me. Hours passed. I didn't sleep. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves made me flinch. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward my tent. I held my breath, frozen with fear. The footsteps stopped right outside. My flashlight flickered, then went out. Then a voice, low and hollow like the wind had taken human form. "We've been waiting for you." I bolted from the tent, sprinting blindly into the forest. The sobbing, whispers, and laughter followed me, all blending into one unbearable sound. I ran until I stumbled into a shallow creek, falling into the cold water, gasping for breath. When I dared to look back, the tree was there, looming taller than it should, its branches swaying though no wind blew. The sun rose slowly, revealing the forest in its deceptive calm. The tree looked ordinary in daylight, peaceful almost. I found my way back to the trail and eventually reached my car. I never returned. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind rustles the trees, I hear the soft, sorrowful cries of the crying tree, and I know, somewhere in Wraithwood, it's still calling, waiting. It was late October when I decided to take a solo camping trip to Hollow Ridge, a forested area known for its thick fogs and remote trails. I was eager for solitude, for the peace that only comes when you're completely alone in the wild. My friends had warned me, Hollow Ridge gets strange, people disappear. I laughed it off. I was cautious. I didn't believe in ghost stories. I arrived at the trailhead just before dusk, carrying a backpack with all the essentials: a tent, sleeping bag, flashlight, snacks, and my journal. The fog had already begun rolling in, a thick, gray curtain weaving through the trees. It clung to the ground and twisted around the trunks like ghostly fingers. I hiked about 2 miles in, following a narrow trail, until I found a small clearing that seemed perfect for setting up camp. I pitched my tent, started a small fire, and sat down, listening to the soft hiss of the fog moving through the forest. The world felt muted, muffled, and strangely oppressive. By nightfall, the fog had thickened, swallowing everything beyond the fire's light. That's when I heard it, a single footstep, faint, deliberate, crunching on the forest floor outside the clearing. I froze. "Hello?" I called softly. No response. The footstep came again, slow, measured, always in the same place, circling the tent. I grabbed my flashlight, shining it into the fog. Nothing. Just gray mist and the dark shapes of trees. My heart raced. I tried to convince myself it was an animal or my imagination, but the footsteps continued, closer now. Around the tent. Always just beyond the beam of light. Minutes stretched into hours. The fog pressed in on me, making it hard to breathe. The footsteps stopped suddenly, replaced by something worse, whispers. Low, sibilant, just at the edge of hearing. They weren't words at first, just murmurs, but soon I could make out phrases. "You shouldn't be here. Come with us. Forever." Panic overtook me. I zipped the tent shut, shaking, trying to block out the sound. But it was inside my head now, echoing, relentless. My fire died. Darkness swallowed everything. Then I heard the unmistakable sound of multiple footsteps. Not outside, inside the clearing, moving in a circle around me. They weren't human. Their pace was uneven, jerky, unnatural. I pressed my hands to my ears, rocking back and forth. The whispers became chanting, overlapping, faster, louder. My flashlight flickered to life on its own, and in the beam, I saw them. Figures emerging from the fog. They were tall, thin, featureless. Their limbs bent in strange angles, moving like marionettes. They didn't speak, they just stared. The chanting stopped abruptly, replaced by silence. Then a single voice, cold and hollow, spoke. "We've been waiting. And now you're ours." I bolted from the tent, tripping over roots, crashing through the fog, heart hammering. The figures followed silently, gliding rather than running. Every step I took felt slower, as if the fog itself was holding me back. I could hear footsteps mimicking mine, always right behind me. Hours or maybe minutes later, I stumbled into an abandoned ranger cabin. I locked the door behind me, trembling, trying to make sense of what was happening. The fog pressed against the windows, thick and impenetrable. The chanting returned, outside, louder now, echoing in a way that made the walls vibrate. Morning came, or so I thought. The fog had lifted slightly. I ran, following a faint path I hoped led out. By afternoon, I found the main road and flagged down a car. I escaped Hollow Ridge, but even now I hear them in my dreams, the soft crunch of footsteps in fog, circling, always following, always whispering my name. And sometimes, in a corner of my vision, I see a gray mist moving, waiting,